Absolutely. Right, item number 11. We have Maori transformational shifts. Welcome Johnny and Shane and right. Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. We're reporting back on the implementation of Budget Committee resolutions made in May this year in the context of the long-term plan, where we conducted a budget refresh process to identify up to $5 million for the 16-17 financial year for Māori transformational shift activity, and a further $2 million related to the Treaty of Waitangi audit. We've identified from across the business, departments and CCOs, 19 initiatives that total around $4.08 million, and also $234,000 relating to co-governance activity. We'll be also undertaking work through the Te Toa Takitini portfolio of work, where a number of new proposals have been identified through programs of action, and we'll look to take those through the annual plan process for 16-17. In relation to the treaty audit program of action, we've identified budget of $1.9 million over the next 3 years to enable further implementation of the treaty audit action. So those are our key summary of the report.
Thank you. Questions of Johnny or Shane? And we have an amendment. Speak to that amendment, David.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Yes, I was sort of hoping that there would have been substantive, but obviously not. So yes, I move it as amendment, and simply it's a reporting request again, dating back to, or relating back to the minute of the Budget Committee 8 May 2015 meeting, resolutions which is BUD 2015-49 C, D and E, which basically committee agreed that the work on identifying programs contributing to Māori transformational shift and outcomes as part of Te Toa Takitini's scoping work identifies at least $5 million for 2016-17 and report to the Finance Committee. September, agreed to identify $2 million over 3 years commencing 2015-16 to implement the Council's response program to the priority recommendations in the Independent Māori Statutory Awards 2014 Treaty Audit Report, including increasing the rollout of Māori responsiveness plans and senior staff training. And E, note that the Chief Executive through the Te Toa Takitini Executive Leadership Group will have oversight over both of those resolutions, C and D and above, and will receive quarterly progress reports on them. So the amendments...
which we will now take as substantive.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to reiterate that, provide for the reporting and acknowledge the work that's going to be done, and looking at those for the new projects and the things. So it's not a major, but it's important to have there.
Thank you. Do you want to move the whole recommendation?
Absolutely, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Member Taipari, seconded by
Me.
you. Member Tamahiri. Welcome.
Don't start.
Right, any questions or discussions? Thank you.
Can we have a chance to read it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you. Councillor Woods.
Yeah, governance. Johnny, under the governance statement, you talk about this amendment in June 2015. Can you just elaborate on what that was, please?
In terms of the Budget Committee resolutions?
Yeah, what's that mean? What does it mean? Obviously, yeah.
Certainly as part of the long-term plan deliberations through the Budget Committee, these resolutions were passed in May to identify, to undertake further work as part of the LTP process to see whether we could identify projects from across CCOs and councils that contribute to Māori transformational shift activity. up to $5 million for the next financial year.
That's in the governance statement, isn't it?
It's on page, it's under 14, councillor Wood.
Oh, it's on page 44, yeah.
34.
Governance statement.
34. 34, paragraph 14.
What,
Yeah, so those are the specific budget committee resolutions on
yeah,
paragraph.
but what, with the governance statement, what was the amendment to the governance statement in June 2015?
Oh, I think you're talking about the next report.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The treaty.
Well,
order.
okay, well, my question really is also, we've been talking about these agreements with the 19 iwi. The Mayor was saying we're going to expedite that. So what's progress at this stage? How many agreements have we got finished?
Certainly, I'm happy to respond to that question, but it's not part of this particular report.
Well, it's part of the governance statement.
Item 11.
Well, okay. I'll come, bring that up at the next one.
I ask it under item 12, thank you,
Okay.
councillor Wood. If there's no other questions, councillor Darby?
Thank you. Thanks, Johnny. Just on 40, co-governance activities, parks, going down the Monga Authority CapEx, add CapEx, but it's blank. Is there something missed off there, or is there just nothing in that category?
There's nothing in that category in terms of anything additional.
Okay, clear, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Quacks?
Yeah, just want a question around one of the 19 transformational shifts activities. Auckland Transport, it looks as though they're going to spend about $500,000 on a road safety program, young Maori drivers and passengers. How would that be different from a safety program to any other section of our community?
Through the chair, the discussions I've had with the transport are saying that this is a targeted fund, and it will be for young Māori drivers, and it'll be for Māori education initiatives and community programs. So it is a program that will have several projects within it. That's as much as I know about that project at this time.
Well, all due respect, doesn't answer my question. I asked how it would be different from any other program to another section of our community.
So, we understand that this initiative is a targeted program as part of a broader initiative catering for wider Aucklanders. There's other aspects that Auckland Transport, we understand, are looking at Pacifica communities as well. So this is just focused on the Māori aspects of that overall program.
How does Maori safety transport or young Maori drivers, how is that different to any other section of the community? I still don't get that. Maybe somebody else can answer it.
Madam Chair, I might be able to give some elucidation there. Over 50% of the... Hang on.
You don't have
Excuse
committee
me, he was the
members.
next speaker, and I've asked him.
Well, it's a question, and point of order, I don't think it's proper that a member of the committee answers another member of the committee's question. That seems just totally out
Times it happens
of
all the time
out of
here,
what
councillor
standing
Wood,
orders
and you.
are.
I know what he's talking about.
Madam Chair,
I think Councillor Quacks is just after
Madam
answer,
Chair,
aren't you?
Madam Chair, I'm
Thank you.
sure
I
that
could answer the question too, but
I'm sure that
I don't think
member-
you want to hear me.
Can we have
sure that member Tamahiri's answer to my question will be totally apolitical.
No.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I seek
As are all
for
my comments.
Councillor Wood to also answer the question.
Councillors.
We
The
didn't
next
speak in right.
speaker was actually member Tamahiri.
Have you finished, Councillor Quack? Thanks. Well, I'll just take the speaking right rather than answer the question, but I will make a comment on the question then. So that obviates all this nonsense here.
Point of order, Madam Chair, point of
Councillor
order.
Wood.
Point of order, I'd asked him to retract
Councillor
that
Wood,
comment because
Councillor Wood, you
denigrating.
promised me,
What's that?
as a chair of a committee of the whole, that you would support our chairing by not jumping in from the side.
Shonky.
Member Tamahiri.
Remember, you're a cow.
Anyway, moving on, just as some just basic metrics, 50% of the prison population this evening, it brings us no comfort to acknowledge that, is ethnically Māori. 65% of incarcerated Māori are there on the basis of transport-related offences, multiple DICs, driving multiply without licences, so on and so forth. So what you do is it doesn't. What you do is you've got to target your major areas of difficulty. So as a consequence, you have to shape policy and the delivery of it to drop that volume. If you don't drop that volume, you pay $90,000 per annum at a in terms of a bed night coverage off the taxpayer system. There's a whole range.
NZTA.
There are a whole range of knock-on costs to local authorities on the way through there. So as part of an end-to-end solution from central government to local government, as we'll need in housing, of course, but also is, that is why you have targeted programs. That is why working with the police and the likes to try and get diversification going as opposed to putting them on a 15 to 20 year criminal justice track is quite important. So early intervention is the key here, basically targeting a significant group that are way out of whack in regard to the general population. And so it's about harm minimisation, really. It's a health-related issue as much as it is a criminal justice issue.
Wow.
Kia ora.
Doesn't sound like a local government issue.
Doesn't sound like local
You-
government.
Criminal justice, health,
thank you.
tax, NZTA.
Thank
Sound like local
you.
government. Maybe you should be back in Parliament, John.
Councillor Walker.
Sure. Just got a couple of questions, and essentially they go to getting some more information, and maybe that could be forthcoming a bit later. I know that there are 5 programs of action, and it would appear that Whai Tiaki Māori cultural wellbeing embraces issues to do with the environment. Is that correct?
Yes.
So environment's not shown separately. So just make that observation. Just in the list under Māori transformational shift activities, where we've got, for example, the infrastructure and environmental activities, the kaitiakitanga for healthy waterways, I'm assuming that the Waitiaki component here is just a part component of a much larger project.
I was there.
Yes,
rather than a specific project.
certainly in terms of the Whaichaki Programme of Action, it's broad cultural and it includes environmental initiatives. These are just new specific initiatives that have been identified in response to the Budget Committee resolutions through the Infrastructure and Environmental Services Department, but there's a whole range of activity that's happening across community development, parks, sport and recreation, also water care, Auckland transport that would deemed as part of the broad kaitiakitanga type initiatives.
Sure. And
certainly in terms of at the next committee meeting in November, we'll be providing quarterly reports and updating on across all that broader activity.
I guess my interest is in knowing how you can just separate part out and allocate it. And you know, there may be some other information that's forthcoming around that. I don't necessarily need the answer right now, but I would be interested. I'm assuming that a number of these other projects, like the Otara waterways, that there is some methodology around the separation of a given amount of budget out. Again, I'd be interested in that.
We'll be able to provide a lot more detailed information at the next quarterly report that actually breaks down the initiatives, and certainly a lot of these initiatives are specifically targeted for Māori communities that form a broader approach in terms of our wider community activity and investment across council.
Okay, so I guess the thrust of my question is around how you're able to separate this amount out when it's a more comprehensive project. I can understand that there are some projects that may be specific to Maori, but then you've got others. So, okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't planning to speak, but I do want to comment on the road safety program for young Maori drivers and passengers, because that is something, and I can understand the sentiment behind the question with Councillor Quacks, and I think we do have to ask ourselves, you know, the reality of what we can spend. We understand our statutory obligations, and we want to see these transformational shifts, but we are also exploring whether or not this is the best spend. And so that, to me, was the question behind Councillor Quacks's and the little discourse that occurred after that. And I'm mindful of that, because later in the agenda, on agenda number 16, we're going to confront the challenge of keeping an organisation going that is really supporting a very big chunk of the ward that Councillor Casey and I represent, and that's to do with the successful integration of refugee and migrants. And there are a very big chunk of young people there, and there's some issues about road safety programs there as well. However, this is about Maori transformational shifts, and what I think the evidence shows is, and it's especially a problem out in South Auckland in the area of Councillor Cashmore, the statistics around young Maori drivers and young people taking risks that not just endanger themselves, but are endangering everybody else on the road. And the statistics out that area are really grim in terms of road deaths, fatalities, and so on. So what I would like, however, is maybe Johnny, or maybe it's something for Sue, to give us the assurance that we have really done the deep dive into these costs, and these do represent really good value. You know, we haven't heard enough in terms of the value proposition of some of these initiatives, and I don't know, Sue, whether you are looking at a set of protocols for how that gets explored for the future, to give councillors the comfort on this that these are going through the same degree of examination as any other proposal that comes forward within the council whānau.
I'm just liaising with my colleague. I mean, these areas of budget have as much or more scrutiny over them than anywhere else in the budget. I think more to the point, there has been explicit agreement and resolution through committee around the criteria that need to be met in order for these initiatives to qualify as being Māori transformational in pursuit of strategies articulated significantly by the IMSB. So they are put through many sieves, and they must reach, they must satisfy criteria in order to qualify to be represented here. And if I might take the opportunity while I'm speaking, on the road safety initiatives, it's important to remember that they are significantly NZTA subsidy funded, and therefore have to meet criteria from that organisation in terms of their appropriateness as spend.
And that was really my point in terms of the evidence-based decisions on those particular transport ones that I was familiar with, but I was wanting the comfort of knowing that the other initiatives had that same degree of integrity in terms of decision-making behind them.
Thank you. Member Taipari.
Oh, kia ora, Madam Chair. That's an interesting conversation we're just having about fairness and scrutiny and being robust. I wish that was the whole case on every line item in the budgets. We might see just where it was all being targeted. So anyway, Madam Chair, just as a mover of the motions, there's one in particular that I just have a bit of concern with and just want some clarity around, and that is D. And that is, in the budget meetings when we approved these things, there was the attempt to amalgamate the Māori outcomes and Māori transformational shifts with the co-governance, and it was agreed not to do that. And yet, all of a sudden, in D, we're noting that we do that. So I don't understand why we're now, many months later, trying to change what we'd already agreed not to do. So if someone can clarify why D is the way it is, please.
Certainly, we are following the LTP resolutions, and we're actually reporting both on Māori transformational shift activity and co-governance. So in terms of the body of the report, we clearly separate those two elements. We're just providing an overall total of the combination between Māori transformational shift and co-governance. So we are sort of making sure that we're keeping those two elements separate, but reporting on them together to this committee.
Then that's my point, Madam
So
Chair.
they're actually...
1 minute they're separate, next minute they're together.
but actually, if you look at the report, Member Taipari, on page 39, it very clearly talks about Māori transformational shifts